Representative Morrison, thanks so much for joining us here on the afternoon shift. There's so much mystery behind what's inside the Whipple building. I know you had the chance to visit and tour it on Friday. Can you just tell us what did you see inside there?
Yeah, well, and thanks for having me and highlighting this just incredibly important issue in Minnesota, certainly, but across the country. So I've been to Whipple 4 times now. The first time I went, I was denied entry. The second time I gave 7 days notice. I actually gave 8 days notice and was granted admission after waiting for an hour. Um, and then I went and I joined the lawsuit. I joined 12 of my colleagues in a lawsuit challenging that 7-day waiting period, making the case that members of Congress need to be able to perform unannounced visits so that we can perform oversight of taxpayer-funded detention facilities. And so a temporary restraining order was granted. So the 13 of us now are able to make unannounced visits. So last Thursday night, as soon as I got back from DC, I went to Whipple again, tried to deny my entry at the gate, sat there for, I think it was almost half an hour with a very argumentative guard, and ultimately 6 ICE or DHS police officers showed up. I had the copy of the temporary restraining order. They took pictures of it, sent it to someone else who they didn't tell me about, eventually was granted entry. And then I went back the following day with my colleagues, Representatives Craig and McCollum. They were denied entry because they're not on the lawsuit. That was the rationale, and went in again. So my overwhelming reaction to being inside of Whipple is that these are unacceptable conditions for a lot of reasons. First of all, everyone is in leg shackles. It's very dehumanizing. It is cold. There's concrete floors. There are minimal access to food. They kind of have snacks that are offered if people ask for it. They have these sort of fake blankets, those sort of tinfoil blankets, and people sleep on the floor. They rationalize all of this as because Whipple is not intended to be a detention facility. It is not a detention facility. So they say that they are not, they don't have to follow the rules of detention facilities. So they send people out on an average, it sounds like, they get a little vague, but it sounds like 2 times a day to Texas, in some cases to Louisiana, and then I learned also still in some cases to third countries. Some people are deported directly from Whipple. As a physician myself, I have deep concerns about the humanitarian treatment of human beings. And I will say too, we now know there's a measles outbreak in Texas. Recently, I believe yesterday, there's now a tuberculosis outbreak being reported. There are no protocols for preventing spread of those very infectious diseases. There aren't basic medical protocols at Whipple. There was a nurse there when I was there. There is not a medical professional there 24/7. One of my visits, a nurse was there, and I asked what the screening process was for putting people on a plane to send them to a detention facility far away. And he said they ask if they have a cough. And that was the extent of it. So that just gives you sort of a little bird's eye view of the horrific and unacceptable conditions, in my view, in the United States of America. It needs to end right now. Operation Metro Surge needs to end, and ICE needs to get out of Minnesota. And, I want to add, Susan Collins, apparently, senator from Maine, was able to prevent ICE from doing a significant exercise or operation in Maine. Good for her. I want ICE and CBP out of Minnesota, but I don't want them to go to another state and inflict the harm that they're doing on our communities somewhere else in our country. So this whole operation needs to end right now before more damage is done to more human beings.
That's just absolutely sickening. I literally have a gut reaction to that, Representative. Thank you for sharing that, because that's important information to know. But just absolutely chilling, and it's just abysmal that people are going through that. I read an interview that you did after you had visited the facility, and you were able to speak with a couple of people in the facility. Just what did you hear from them, and what have you heard from other people that have been detained in the Whipple building?
Yeah, this whole thing is gutting. There's no doubt about it. So in my first visit that I was granted entry, I was allowed to speak to two of the detainees. The first one was a woman who had just been returned from Texas, incidentally. And the minute that we were allowed to speak, she said, "They are being cruel. They are not treating us like human beings here." She said, "We slept on the concrete floor last night with no blanket. We were freezing. We were begging for a blanket, anything to keep us warm, and they declined." The other woman that I was able to speak to, I asked to speak to because she was alone in a cell, legs shackled. She looked distraught. She was crying. So I went in and we spoke Spanish, actually. She didn't speak English. It was not clear to me that the guards spoke Spanish or were able to communicate with her. And she told me that she and her husband had been taken that morning. They were with their 7-year-old daughter. The daughter was left behind with a friend. And she was, of course, distraught because she had been unable to speak with her daughter to make sure that she knew she was okay and taken care of and that she understood where her parents were. She asked the guards, she asked me to ask the guards if she was being taken to Texas that morning or what was going to happen to her. They either wouldn't or couldn't respond. It was horrifying and these are the only two that I've been able to speak to, and both of them described just unacceptable conditions. The next two times where I made unannounced visits, I was prevented from speaking with any of the detainees, which I think is noteworthy given my experience of speaking to just two.
Yeah. Representative Morrison, what's next in this case? I know this partial government shutdown, the funding for DHS expires on Friday. What are you hearing inside Congress from your colleagues over there? And what is next? You say you want ICE out of Minnesota. When do you think is a tangible date where that actually may happen?
There are negotiations going on right now, and I was heartened to see that leadership, Democratic leadership in both the House and the Senate, have issued a series of 10 demands that they say need to be met before any Democrats, or at least the majority of Democrats, will be able to support a bill. I'm glad to see those. I would take it further because of my experience of being inside of Whipple now several times and of being a Minnesotan and seeing and hearing about and experiencing what is happening in the streets of the metro area and across our state, frankly. I would like to see absolutely specific conditions for what detention conditions should look like. We need to have basic humanitarian care, medical care. We need to be meeting just the most basic standards for detention of human beings. We need to make sure that due process is being followed according to our Constitution. So there are some just really basic requirements for me, in addition to ending Operation Metro Surge. And I just want to remind people that the Republicans control the majorities in the House and the Senate, and they control the White House. They have made these decisions, they have made these policy decisions, and they can reverse them. So it's going to be incumbent upon certainly my colleagues in Minnesota. We have 4 members of Congress who represent Minnesota from the Republican Party. And I would call on them, and I have been calling on them, to start to speak up and protect our state from the humanitarian damage that's being done and also the economic damage that's being done. The small businesses community is being decimated. Our schools, our children are being harmed. I met with my superintendents in my district just about a week and a half ago, and the stories that they described were horrifying, of children being tackled in school parking lots, ICE agents accosting 13-year-old children, asking where their parents were born, demanding to see papers. This is a dystopian nightmare in our state right now, and it's got to end.
Yeah. Representative Morrison, we really appreciate your time. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much for having me. Take care.
Thanks.